Now that we know how valuable the forest is, and unfortunately we're losing quite a bit of it from solar development, now we'd like to hear from someone who has experience with solar development and get his perception of what some of the obstacles are from um, locating solar in developed and disturbed areas, because this person has done that. So now we're going to hear from David Milner. David is the founder and CEO of New Gen Capital, located in Warren, Rhode Island. Over the past 20 years, David founded and operated successful investment companies and businesses in energy and real estate. David was a director of climate and alternative energy at Hastings Funds Management, a private equity fund based in Australia. He was also the co-founder of the Climate Leaders Fund, a private equity fund in the US and Australia. In 2012, Mr. Milner took a sabbatical from NewGen to serve as the chief corporate officer of the Campaign to Fix the Debt, a national effort funded by the Erskine Bells and Senator Alan Simpson to encourage a comprehensive debt deal. David has a BA in economics from Middlebury College and attended the University of Chicago Graduate School of Business as a national fellow. David, it's all yours.
Great, thank you. For some reason, I cannot start my video, so it says unable to start video, so I will just speak without the image. Scott, thank you for the kind introduction, and the presentation so far have been fascinating. I've learned a lot, and I've been in the solar industry for over 10 years now, so I've pretty much seen it all. You know, we're all on this call today, obviously, because we care about our state of Rhode Island, our country, and indeed our world, and how it develops and how it should develop, and the questions and trade-offs around development. Today, we're focusing on solar siting, and my goal here is to provide both some framing concepts the way I think about it, as well as some solar project data and information. The way I view what's happening is that solar and solar siting is where the market meets policies, regulations, and incentives. So if you think of that as a Venn diagram, the market goes to where those best align. And if there is consensus that we want to see something different, then we need to incentivize that or disincentivize that. And I believe that everyone actually does care where solar is sited. They just have a different opinion on where those trade-offs should be. I personally don't think solar everywhere should be the mantra. And indeed, there are already restrictions, but it should be more solar where it is most appropriate. And then we can all debate where it's appropriate. Similar to how utilities, and I did notice a question in there, how utilities have priced solar interconnections based on the physical location of where that solar is regarding the grid and the grid's capacity. You could imagine a world where solar is priced based on where it is located. And in fact, Massachusetts has begun to do that. And I think some of the statistics that John, you presented sort of show a dropping off of forestry land. So in terms of incentives and disincentives or outright zoning changes, I wanted to bring you into some of fundamental economic reality that comes with rooftops and landfills and solar projects. The reality is rooftops and landfills are much riskier and more expensive than an open field or than land. So that's where people want to go. And in fact, there are some investors that won't fund or own solar projects unless it's on the ground. And there's some banks likewise that won't do that because of the risks. So why? So let's just take roofs for a second. when roofs leak, it's a serious problem. Not so much for the ground. When roofs have to eventually be replaced, obviously, and not the ground. Roofs have structural risk, not the ground. So everybody, by and large, for large scale solar, wants to go to the ground and ground mounts. For landfills, for example, landfills have some nasty environmental issues and a lot of trash in them. Landfills settle over time, so solar panels move, so you have to prop them up. And landfills off gas and need to be monitored and maintained. So it's more expensive, and there's more issues with it. So if you have a more expensive and a riskier project and proposition, when you then go to sell the power that that solar farm generates, the power is actually also more expensive. So despite the general caring about the issues we're talking about today, most off-takers will take the lowest price, understandably, with fiduciary responsibility and their ability to justify taking a lower price and saying, well, that's the market. So with some notable exceptions, which I'll get to in a minute. So what does this mean in terms of development and where solar is going without any market sort of direction? And by the way, I should just note, it is way worse for carports. They are more expensive than landfills and rooftops because of the amount of steel that it's required and the structural issues and the wind load for carports. So they've got it even worse. But it means you have to add, for these kinds of projects that strike many, including myself, as very solar appropriate sites, you have to add offtake power sale risk to the list that I mentioned above. So these costs and risk factors are going to steer the generic market away from them and towards what is the safer, easier, low-hanging fruit approaches. Now, I want to note that the costs are not true with used gravel pits or some previously disturbed land, because they don't have the risks that I mentioned above and they've already been disturbed. But there are not enough of those in terms of acres or size to hit some of the broader solar goals and where solar appears to be naturally heading. There's two notable exceptions to that offtake dynamic, which is that the state of Rhode Island has just issued an RFP right now and has limited the type of project that can submit. So they will not review a project that's cleared forests or that's on green virgin land, which obviously shrinks the supply of projects, which means projects like roofs and landfills and potentially carports will have a better chance of winning that RFP. And also in Rhode Island, Brown University has limited the sites it has decided to purchase from. So what do we do and where do we go? I think if we want to see something different, we have to provide incentives or disincentives or both for what we want to see happen. Massachusetts, in its newest program, had these land adders or subtractors in terms of the price of the solar energy that would be coming off of that. So if you used undisturbed land and a lot of land, you would actually get less money for what is basically a feed-in tariff type design. And if you used a rooftop or landfill, you would get more. But without that market signal and that market nudge, solar will keep going to the lowest hanging fruit, which is unfortunately some of the land we've been talking about today. And the other, obviously, task and job is to change zoning. And you can do that town by town. It's really hard to coordinate. The towns like the idea of the tax revenue. I was reading about a Western Massachusetts solar project just last week that is enormous, that's going to clear forests, and the town can get $450,000 a year in tax revenue by allowing it to occur. That's pretty tempting for some of these rural towns. So we really do, I think, need to incentivize what we want to see. And what I might do is give you just do a quick screen share of the sense of scale of what a rooftop that we're doing right now. Let's see if this works. There's also an article about it. I don't know if that's actually working. But in any case, this rooftop is about 15 acres. It's the largest roof that we're aware of to date in Rhode Island. It was the old Stanley Bostitch manufacturing facility. Oh, there, Yahoo Finance did an article about it. It's hard to tell. Thank you, Heidi, from that photo there, but that it is an enormous, almost 7 megawatt site. So it's larger than the average site that John, you spoke about in Massachusetts. And if we want to see roofs like that covered in solar panels, then we do need to change the market dynamics. And I think that's coming. I think we will. I think the future is bright, no pun intended, for solar and energy generation. But I think we need to do a little bit more work on how we weigh the pros and cons of development, not only of solar, but development in general, for the sake of our planet.